Enjoy.
I pick one. We can just play three headlines and a lie.
Fantastic. Who could have thought
Who
that?
would have? Who
Who-
could have predicted this?
Who would have seen that coming, and why didn't anyone warn them?
Ticked off, tee off. This is it.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin. Hello, Wisconsin. Happy rainy Monday. Spring showers? Is that what we're doing with Jane Matnair?
Yeah, I was a little surprised by the thunder and lightning about 7 o'clock this morning as I was just about to head out the door.
Yeah, it was a little after all the snowstorms the last 2 weeks. Having a thunderstorm not on my bingo card.
Yeah.
Certainly not. But happy Monday. How you doing?
I am doing well. Just one little quick road note. Checking out the 511wi.gov website. Again, it's always a good resource for you to check if you want to see what the roads are like around the state. We do have some accidents scattered primarily around Green Bay, it looks like, because they're getting a different snow ice kind of mess. And then around Neenah as well. But otherwise, things don't look too terrible.
Too terrible. Is this all supposed to freeze?
The central part, north of us, it might not be good.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. We have some ice, the potential for some ice skating rinks.
I'm getting to the point. I know everyone's going to say, oh, this winter has been really easy. And it has been really easy. But the snowbanks, I'm done with the snowbanks. I got stuck in my snowbank again this morning.
Did you really coming out of your driveway?
Well, Mike parked behind me, and so I was trying to not hit his car, which was very thoughtful of me because I think normally in the morning I wouldn't have looked and I would have just backed into him. But I was trying to avoid him ever so gently.
Mhm.
And then I stopped looking behind me once I cleared his car and just went a little bit off the driveway, and my California snow tires just plop stuck me right in the middle of the snowbank, and Michael had to come out in his sweatpants and shovel me out and push me out on my way.
In the rain. Oh, I bet he loved that. That's being a good husband.
He is a good husband. He
Yes.
is a very good husband. Thank you, Michael. All right. Well, today we have a ton of guests today.
We do.
Coming up in the noon hour, we are talking to Professor John Sheldon about his new book that looks at the evolution of education and when education went from being, especially public education, went from being the public good because it was teaching people about how to be a participant in democracy to the linchpin of economic mobility.
So
And
like
it
you
was-
have to either you go to college or you're never going to succeed.
Or you finish high school and you're never going to succeed, right? That the shift of its purpose. And so he wrote a whole book on that. So he's going to be joining at noon to talk about that. And then we're going to be talking to Colleen McCarthy, who's the VP of Versiti Organ and Tissue Donations. And you were actually found this because we got a PSA, note.
We did. We got a PSA announcement on just about organ donation and how important it is. And I have done other stories about organ donation, even body donation, which is something that I also would like us to talk about down the road.
You're donating your entire body to
Yeah.
science?
You can donate your body to science and who they take and what they do. And it's really, really interesting. But yeah, organ donation is something that I don't think many people think about unless it affects someone in your own life,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Although when you say, we'll get into it with Colleen, but when you say body donation, all I can think of is Body Works. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
That wild exhibit?
Yes.
And then they kind of got in trouble because then they started investigating, like, where did all these bodies actually come from, man?
Did they say yes?
Did they say yes?
No, that's not what happens, at least when you donate it to the Medical College of Wisconsin.
I would love to be immortalized in some kind of scientific touring museum
Right?
thing rather than, like, I don't know, either be cremated or buried somewhere. Like, that feels more useful.
Absolutely. And I know there are people who have written letters to the medical students who will be studying on them because that's what they do.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
how that's called practice.
Anyways, well, so that's coming up in the noon hour. But to start off today, ticked off tee off. That's one of the better names we've come up with so far. I really like the ticked off tee off. The Party of Freedom at it again. Just really giving you the freedom to do what you want because this is a free country. We have to travel to Tennessee for this story.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them had to be the first. As long as Wisconsin wasn't the first in this arena, which is so long as we have split government, we won't be. But no doubt this bill could come, something like this could start getting circulated around in Madison in certain legislative offices. But Tennessee will be the first state to restrict drag shows. And this last week, Tennessee lawmakers passed the nation's first bill restricting public drag performances. It's the first to pass, but there are at least 20 similar bills proposed around the country by Republican politicians. And it basically says, quote, adult cabaret entertainment on public property or anywhere children might see. It puts male or female impersonators. So it doesn't say specifically drag performers. It says male or female impersonators.
Okay.
Into that category, regardless of the content of their performance. So it's not, I think what I understand that to be, it's not burlesque. It's not stripping of any sort. It is any kind of male or female impersonator doing anything. So like
on public property,
on
though.
public property.
So we're talking about parks.
We're talking about parades.
Oh, parades.
Or any kind of restaurant where children could potentially be. So basically anywhere that a child could be. So I think this is basically restricting it to 18 and up private events. So proponents of the bill says it protects children from sexualized performances. And despite the fact that Tennessee has had obscenity laws in place that ban things like nudity and sexual content in front of minors. And so basically it eliminates all ages drag shows like drag brunches and drag queen story hours. And it severely limits what will be possible at public pride parades. The language of the legislation could also be interpreted to apply to trans people doing any kind of performance, not just drag. So think about that. So someone who is trans, which there's two different things. There's people who are drag performers and they can be drag queens and they have the makeup and the wig and the lip syncing and the performance, right?
Right.
And there are drag kings. There's women who dress up as men and do a performance. There's also trans people who are actors and they are playing a role but their actual body for themselves are trans. And so I think there is worry that this limits trans people
from
acting, from performing, potentially. And it's just, show me any evidence of how this solves anything. Because I know we're beating a dead horse when we point to the countless child sex scandals in churches.
It's astonishing. There are several a week.
And yet we don't see any bans there. Kids can't go to church, even though there is so much more evidence that they will be groomed and have predatory people they're supposed to trust. And yet Hamburger Mary's can't be in Tennessee anymore. Really, really getting to the root of the problem.
Well, and again, I would like to see some evidence of trans attacks on children or drag performers' attacks on children.
I know.
I follow the news pretty closely, as do you. I have yet to see one instance.
Because if it happened.
Oh, it would be everywhere.
Everywhere.
Absolutely.
It would be everywhere if it actually would have happened anywhere.
Yes.
And it just makes you come back to saying, thank God Tony Evers was elected again. Because there's no reason why this, like, I would have to look up what the other 20 states that are circulating something like this, but that's not it. I mean, this is the same thing we talked about, some of the anti-trans, like, youth stuff that's been going on, but there's at least 340 anti-LGBTQ bills that range from limiting gender affirming care to mandating which bathroom people can use that has been introduced this year. We're at the end of February.
Yeah.
340 bills. Like, what are we doing?
It's called distraction.
Oh, why did my camera just move?
Don't you think? It's called, again, we need a boogeyman. We need someone to scare people with. So we're going to go after the trans and LGBTQ community and make them the latest other.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just like why how do people fall for this so easily?
Well, it depends upon what news outlets or alleged news outlets you watch.
Cuz it like I was talking to a friend last night and he asked my opinion on the Roald Dahl thing. Cuz the Roald Dahl books, there's the group, the private entity that owns the rights to Roald Dahl's books are making the choice that they're updating some of the language. And there is a big debate on, like, is this ruining his canon and all this stuff, because I didn't know about this. Do you know that in the original book, it wasn't Oompa Loompas that were from some magical island. It was African pygmies.
Oh,
And they changed that for the movie. They changed that for the Gene Wilder movie
in Willy Wonka.
in Willy Wonka. So, like, there's certain things that were updated, but then there's a lot of pushback on, like, oh, you can't call the character, like, they're not going to call the big
Fat.
fat anymore and stuff like that. So I was listening to an interesting debate on that, and I had a friend be like, "What do you think about this?" He's like, "I feel like the liberals are making us this into 1984." I was like, "I'm sorry, you mean the private company that's choosing to do this? What bills and what laws have Democrats passed that are taking away your rights?" And they changed the subject. So
Oh, really?
yeah, convenient.
Oh.
That's what text messaging is, convenient in that way when you can just stop responding. All
I-
right.
I
Well,
have no answer to that, so I'll go away.
so I think he instead quoted Fahrenheit 451. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to watch The Last of Us because it's Sunday night and I'm tired. All right. This is
Civic Media team would like to say congratulations. More than 200 Wisconsin businesses and nonprofits are receiving a free advertising campaign through our one-day $1 million advertising giveaway. If you missed out, our local sales team would still love to help you with your own campaign. Go to civicmedia.us and click on the sponsorship tab. Again, civicmedia.us and sponsorship. New and still growing. Advertise today with the Civic Media Network of Radio.
Got a good text to come back with.
Monday morning at 8. Don't miss Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, featuring legend.
wanna be in the headlines. Anything to be in the headlines. Summer chance.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair. You are welcome to join the conversation. 844-967-2789. That is 844-96-PARTY. After this segment, in the next segment, we're going to talk about who should get the 44,000 hours of January 6th footage. Because we know Tucker Carlson has them.
Yeah.
But now, basically every other outlet who I probably has a better case for why they should have them, has submitted a request that they also get them. So we'll talk a little bit more about that after this segment. But coming back, you said that we had a text?
We did. We were talking about the number of states across the country that are coming out with new laws limiting or banning drag performers, trans performers. Texter from the 920 checking in. So a female performing as Peter Pan
I know.
is going to be banned. Does that mean Mrs. Doubtfire can't be shown at a theater? What about Shakespeare in Love? What about, there are numerous examples I can think of. What about Bosom Buddies?
I mean,
A TV show.
I think about as a kid, I was just telling this story because someone asked me how I got into acting as a kid. And I said, in the cul-de-sac neighborhood I grew up on, almost every single house had a kid. And two of the oldest girls of the children on the block were already very into theater. And so they had been part of children's theater in Madison. And so they knew how. So, like, we had, when I was 6, we did a production of Cinderella. But, like, it wasn't just in an afternoon we did it. It was like a 6-week rehearsal schedule.
Wow.
And like there was costumes, like there was a whole thing. And then they went on the next summer, we did Beauty and the Beast. And guess who was the Beast?
Was it you?
It was me. I had some like brown wig, and I think it was 4 inches shorter than the girl who played Belle because she was like 5 years older than me.
Oh, that's
But
hilarious.
I was just shock, big shock. I was really loud.
I bet.
And so they thought I could do the roar and all this stuff. And then the next one I was the Scarecrow in Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
So like I was a kid, I was a girl playing boy parts.
Can't do that.
We can't do that.
That's no.
Can't just like let kids be kids. And I think I played Uncle Sam in something when I was in 5th grade, and like Santa Claus and something. It's like I was just the charismatic performer kid. And I just wanted the lead,
It's
no matter what gender it was.
I'm sorry, but you are grooming and confusing children, Kristen, and so that's no longer going to be allowed. Another text from the 414, just a thought, if certain clothing, for instance, that which desecrates the flag or some artistic work can't be prohibited based on freedom of speech, how can this proposed Tennessee law be constitutional? Does it not prohibit free expression in the same way?
Well, and that's why I was wondering, this would be a Jim Santel question or one of our legal friends, because there's a part of me that wonders if the ACLU is going to be all over this.
Yeah.
And try to challenge freedom of expression. And like, if this is actually constitutional, that you can limit, if it's not nudity and if you can't, like, how do you have to define it as some kind of obscenity, right?
I would assume
to limit
so.
it. See, this is when I have no interest in ever being a lawyer, but I wish I knew the law. You know what I mean? As far as being able to just talk eloquently about this, about what you can and cannot do.
Takes a lot of study. Although, again, I look at some of our representatives in Congress, they managed to get through law school. I would certainly think you and I can get through law school.
That's fair.
Right?
That is fair. Well, unless it's Pat Robertson's. What do you think Pat Robertson's law school was like?
Short. I think the classes were short.
I actually want to look into that more because obviously that is where Dan Kelly went and Jennifer Doro, but she is out of the race now. But now that looking a little bit more into the law school credentials
and curriculum.
If it follows everything that, the other law schools like Marquette and UW-Madison and what they have to do.
I don't know. It might just the law according to Pat.
The law according to the Bible? Like, that's what what in this scenario, like, what extra pizzazz do you get by going to like a Christian nationalist law school.
Well, there's a whole chapter on an eye for an eye.
Ah, yes. Retribution.
Exactly.
Love it.
Not turn the other cheek, but an eye for an eye. That's the one they like.
Actually, yeah. Well, I'm not gonna have enough time to talk about this, but breaking news this morning: Mark Lazary
Yeah.
selling his shares or his stake in the Bucks to another shockingly very rich person.
Never saw that coming.
Never saw that coming. But Haslams, I don't know if I'm saying it right. So it's a group, it's a man and a woman, or a man and a wife, who already own Cleveland.
The Browns.
The Browns,
Mhm.
yes. And then it seems like some MLS minor league. No, MLS for Major League Soccer. So or already sports owners. So Mark Lazary exiting the Bucks. Don't know what that means for Alex.
Alex, man, we just talked to him last week.
We just talked to him last week. I mean, I think I would assume that his job is secure and that as he said, he will stay in Milwaukee and everything, but it's interesting cuz the worst case scenario as these teams get bought and sold to people who are trying to make money because the numbers here, I think the valuation of the Bucks now is $3.5 billion.
Yeah, that's quite a jump.
And when Lazary and Edens bought it, it was 550 million.
Yeah, that's quite an improvement in your investment.
Yeah, that's money well spent. And so, but as something becomes more valuable, I think the biggest fear is always when do they take the Bucks out of Milwaukee? Because they can. It's not like the Packers where they're a nonprofit where no one will profit by them selling. And that's the only reason why the Green Bay Packers stay in Green Bay is just because of how the entity is set up. But I don't know. I feel like whenever stuff like this happens, people's spidey senses get up and worried.
Well, can you imagine the outcry if they up after building that stadium,
Yeah, that's true.
that arena, and they up and left? I think people would be annoyed.
That's true. All right. When we come back, who should get the January 6th 44,000 hours? And even more, who has to watch it? This is Ask Goes Wisconsin.
Are my babies coming home tomorrow? Ain't that good news? Man, ain't that news? Babies coming home tomorrow. Ain't that news? Man, ain't that news?
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair. Who should get the 44,000 hours of January 6th footage? Should anyone get it? I think is the question. And so 844-967-2789. That is 844-96-party. Because we didn't talk about this last week, despite it being fairly big news, that House Speaker Kevin McCarthy basically gave 44,000 hours of surveillance footage exclusively to Tucker Carlson
In the interest of transparency.
in the interest of transparency.
Yes.
And Tucker told his viewers last Monday that his team would spend the week reviewing the footage before releasing its findings. And a reminder that Fox identifies Carlson as an opinion show, not a news show.
Not news.
news.
Not
Not
news.
news.
No,
Opinion.
not news.
Talking about practice? That's exactly where my mind just went. And Carlson has repeatedly questioned the significance of the attack and the conclusions that says it was, a bad thing.
And just a reminder that we also just found out within the last couple of weeks that Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity and even some of the management at Fox News knew that it was a lie that the 2020 election was stolen, but they wanted to respect their audience and give them what they wanted so they wouldn't lose ratings.
Yep. Actually, just listening to the Daily this morning, and this could be the one time that in what is usually so hard to accomplish, which is to sue a media company,
Mhm.
because they have to show malice. And, Fox's response to Dominion sharing some of the text messages and that show that Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity,
Even-
producers,
Even Rupee.
even Murdoch knowing the truth and yet moving forward because they were losing viewers to OAN and other ultra right-wing outlets, that there's a chance. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that it was a weird choice. It was
Yes.
a weird choice to be like, yeah, like I'm going to give this exclusively to Tucker Carlson, an opinion right-wing show host, not, the New York Times or the AP or the Washington Post or any of the still credentialed
News
news
outlets?
outlets, not opinion outlets, news outlets. I mean, they didn't even give it to the news division of Fox.
There's a news division at Fox?
There is.
Is that a joke?
No, that's where Wallace worked for so long, and he was good. Chris Wallace was great, but then even he was like, "I got to get out of here, man." Like, I don't know who's left, who's great, but anyways. So,
Oh,
Then-
just one side note while we're talking about that. Howard Kurtz, who was on the Fox Business Channel, I believe,
okay,
yesterday even said on his program that he believes he should be reporting on the Dominion lawsuit because it's a big story, but management won't let him.
wait, he said that on air.
Yes,
Oh,
he
that's
said, "Yep,
interesting.
I would like to cover it. I think it's worth covering, but
I'm not allowed.
I'm
to.
not allowed to because we're involved. We're being sued by this company."
Which, I mean, then how can you actually trust his reporting
Reporting.
on it as well? So I understand that there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, but as a reporter, I can understand him being like,
Dudes, this is a story.
So just quickly, Brian Style,
Our
Brian Style,
Brian
Wisconsin's
Style.
Brian Style, defended the move. And he claimed that the move was made in an effort to be transparent. And this was his quote: "I support Speaker McCarthy's decision to increase transparency for the American people." And he is the leader of the House Administration Committee, which oversees Capitol security. So this is why his quote matters. He said, this majority is focused on accountability, transparency, and restoring the people's trust.
I'm sorry.
And he accused the January 6th committee of selectively leaking footage and noted that former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's daughter, Alexandra Pelosi, filmed footage for a documentary that she was filming that included video of lawmakers' hideaways as supporters of former President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol. So, in that effort of him saying we are trying to restore the people's trust and have transparency, hopefully that means Brian Style will also be in favor of the other news outlets that are saying, what about us?
I have a feeling, just Spidey senses are tingling, that Brian Style will not agree with releasing all of that same footage to actual news outlets.
I guess we'll see. Someone should ask him.
Yeah.
But over the weekend, or I guess this was on Friday, scores of news organizations on Friday demanded congressional leaders release all of the surveillance footage from the January 6th, to them as well. So this was a letter sent on the behalf of CBS News, Washington Post, CNN, Politico, ProPublica, ABC, Axios, Advance, Scripps, the Los Angeles Times, Gannett, all saying that this footage should be available to them as well. And so this was a quote from that. Without full public access to the complete historical record, there is concern that an ideologically based narrative of an already polarizing event will take hold in the public consciousness. You don't say. With destabilizing risks to the legitimacy of Congress, the Capitol Police, and the various federal investigations and prosecutions of January 6 crimes, the letter stated. I would have to agree with them.
I think it's tough to argue against it.
Yes. And so the Associated Press and New York Times sent a separate letter to McCarthy specifically seeking access to the material. And McCarthy has just been zipped. He hasn't, he's been silent about the footage. He hasn't spoken publicly or responded to questions about the release. And even in the articles I was reading this morning about Friday's letter, has not responded to comment. And so I guess this opens up, instead of, I feel like it feels obvious that if Tucker gets it, everyone else should get it too. So I guess that's question number one, is should everyone else get it? But also, should anyone get it? Because at least on its face, what Democrats are arguing as to why their argument against the initial handing over all of this footage to Tucker was that it's a security threat.
Of course.
And saying that, when the January 6th committee chose what they would air, they had worked really closely with the Capitol Police to choose what footage got shown, because there's worry about sensitive information like the pathways lawmakers took to get to their secure locations, where Capitol Police have cameras throughout all of the property.
Right. Wouldn't that kind of information really help people if they wanted to do another coup?
Yes.
Oh,
I guess they could just move all of them, because that doesn't seem like a small task. And so I guess the question number one is, in the name of transparency and public trust, should this footage be released at all? And I guess then if yes, shouldn't it be released to all news outlets? Do you have a strong feeling on this?
I do. Well, it's already out there. The Pandora's box has been opened.
Mhm.
They gave it to Tucker. Now it has to go to
Yeah.
everyone. I think there are security issues, and I think that that's going to be an ongoing problem. I do look forward to seeing all of Tucker's footage about people just standing around during a normal tourist visit, holding hands and singing Kumbaya, because I know that happened a lot that day. And again, never forget that this is the network when Bill O'Reilly was still there, and their number one star, Bill O'Reilly, during the Act 10 protests in Madison, aired footage allegedly from Madison in February that had palm trees in the background. So I know who I trust. I know which network I can go to when I need the absolute unadulterated truth, Kristen Bright.
And again, it's funny to think about what. First of all, 44,000 hours of footage.
That's a job,
What
eh?
intern has to go sit and watch that? Remember when we talked about I think it was Mandela Barnes tweets and someone had like whose job it was to go through all like 44,000 of them for like the last decade or whatever it was. And just cuz it reminds me of the people whose job it is at social media platforms to be the human content moderators who are watching like obscene, violent, awful footage that people upload willingly.
Yes.
And I'm sure some of it is boring, but also, I don't know. I mean, it also opens the question of like, is there stuff that's actually because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's boring, right? Certainly the things that have been shown throughout the January 6th committee hearings were chosen to demonstrate what the day was like, but also to elicit emotion,
Of course.
right? And so I'm sure thousands of the hours are actually quite boring and people just waiting, standing until everything kind of erupted. But also, I wonder if there's stuff that's worse.
Some of it, at least what the January 6th committee released, was so violent and so disturbing that much like those content moderators that you mentioned, these people are going to need psychological counseling after going
I
through
know.
all of that footage. It's hard to watch, I think.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch Americans doing this to other Americans.
And so I don't know. Like I think I'm with you as far as what's out there.
You gotta give it away now.
And so now it has to go to more credible sources or unbiased sources or bias. I mean, at this point, or bias, right? Because you've chosen something that is you like objectively biased as far as we all know the side that's coming from. There's an argument as far as the role it plays. Fine, that it's right to exist and having a different point of view and like that is a different question, but it is objectively biased as far as especially their opinion programming. If you want to try to argue that their news programming is not, fine, but certainly their opinion programming, which is what Tucker Carlson is.
Yes, he is not a newsman.
And so this is like the equivalent of handing it over to the Daily Show and letting the Daily Show do their editing master, like their math. Like the people who are the editors at Daily Show and the way that they find stuff and cut stuff together into a montage to prove a point. I wonder what they would do with this footage.
And last week tonight too with John Oliver.
What is there anything in there that could be funny?
That is an interesting question.
Like, is there anything that one of the comedy shows, if they also got access? I did not see Comedy Central's name on the list of people who signed off on the letter to try to get all of this information and all this footage, but without Jordan Klepper there interviewing people, is there anything there that could have been used for a comedy bit?
Oh, I don't know. I think Josh Hawley running away could be clipped.
That's true.
Into something.
People have already done that, though.
I know, but there's potential there. There's more potential there.
Speaking of which, this is totally random. There's a video going around right now of Ted Cruz trying to sing Amazing Grace, and it's basically to the tune of Gilligan's Island.
What?
I feel like I have to send it to you so we can air it. But it is so weird, and the clip is basically like him like proving that he knows the lyrics to Amazing Grace. He goes, I can't even replicate it, but it reminded me of just like when some of these guys are just so weird.
And Ted Cruz went to Harvard.
Also went to Harvard.
Yeah.
And did he go to Yale Law School?
I believe so, yes.
Harvard undergrad, Yale Law School?
Yep.
See?
We could pass.
All right, when we come back, they're speeding up baseball. Good thing or bad thing? This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Man, ain't that news? My baby's coming home tomorrow. Ain't that good news? Man, ain't that news? Good news. Good news. Ain't that good news?
Governor Tony Evers, Tim Michaels said you had gone, quote, full woke. Dr. Jill Underly said that somebody who says that has no idea what we're doing in schools to make sure kids feel safe.
We want to make sure all kids feel supported. Tim Michaels, we don't teach CRT in our schools. You got to come to the present century here, Kim, and be cognizant of what actually goes in the schools. My guess is you've never been in a public school in Wisconsin.
Up North News Radio with Pat Krylo airs at its new time from 6 to 8 a.m. weekdays across Civic Media.
I'm looking at the phone lines. I'm seeing some familiar faces. What's in mind, Gina Vauclair?
Well, welcome back, Matt. I really miss you. We've been missing getting woke every morning, but now we'll get woke in the afternoon.
What's in mind, Andrew of Detroit?
Professor, it's so nice you're back. We missed you during your
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry and Jane Madnair. So I like going to a baseball game.
Yeah.
I don't really watch baseball at home. I don't like sit and watch a baseball game. And part of it is because there's not a lot of action.
There's a lot of downtime.
There's a lot of downtime. And, for a while, in all the professional sports, like you kind of hear about this, like there's little tweaking here or there as far as I feel like every year the NFL always has new
Does
rules.
something.
But the league, the Major League Baseball, is trying to speed up its games. And it could be working. So in a training game over the weekend, the Atlanta Braves and Boston Red Sox ended in a 6-6 tie after Braves player Cal Conley struck out for not getting set in the batter's box in time.
What?
So he struck out not because there was 3 strikes, but because he didn't get into the batter box in time.
So it's all the dinking around with fixing your gloves and tweaking this and gripping up on the club and doing all that stuff before you step into the batter's box. And
yeah.
Okay.
So in time is not a phrase you often hear associated with baseball, but that is largely all of the kind of tweaks that they're trying to make to the game as the league enters its Sonic the Hedgehog era. And, it's getting, I think there's concerns that it's getting disrupted by faster paced sports, which arguably, besides like golf, most other sports, I would say, are. I mean, I'm sure there's some baseball enthusiasts who would say are going to be very upset about this.
No doubt.
But it is slow. And it also can last forever.
4.5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
6 hours.
And so MLB is disrupting itself by introducing new rules this year to speed up the game and generate more offense. So some of the rules include a pitch clock, so pitchers and hitters can't loaf around in between pitches. I like the term loaf around. They can't dilly-dally.
Oh, dilly-dally is even better.
The elimination of extreme defensive shifts to encourage more offense. See, I don't know enough about baseball to even know what that means. Do you know what that means?
You're asking me?
I know. Well, there's no one else here.
I could make something up, but it would be wrong.
Bigger bases to boost the number of stolen bases.
Oh, there are baseball fans who are going to scream about
I
this.
know. Bigger I mean, I wonder how much bigger we're talking. Are we talking like an inch or are we talking like cartoon sized?
Well, if you're going to do it right. You may as well make them gigundo.
Yeah.
Now you're tweaking with the purity of the game.
You're also tweaking with the skill of the players, right? You're making it easier, which I guess is the point. But they're also limiting the number of mound disengagements, like pickoff throws. Again, I don't know enough about baseball to even know what that is. But yeah. And so those don't feel like small changes.
No, they don't.
Especially to strike out because you took too long.
Well, but see, that I think would be the biggest motivator. It's like, again, you fixed your gloves 3 times already. That should be enough. Get in there and swing at the ball.
It's kind of like during the championship, the Bucks championship in 2021, where they were counting because Giannis took so long to shoot his free throws. And so they'd count to 10. And now he's a little bit faster, but he really took his time before, and he still wasn't very good that year.
He does a lot of other things well.
He does. But so yeah, so it's going to take some getting used to. I think for a lot of people, I'm sure there's going to be people who are very upset.
And players too, because, and we've talked about this before, at least as far as I am aware, baseball players are among the most superstitious and have their rituals that they do.
Yeah. But I guess, the big picture is that for fans who love baseball but can't justify spending 3 hours watching it, especially when there's like 180 games a season, these could be welcome changes. This one of the games over the weekend, the Padres versus the Mariners game on Friday, took only 2.5 hours. No, 2 hours and 29 minutes.
Wow.
To complete.
That's quick.
About 40 minutes shorter than last year's regular season average per ESPN. So,
and is this, they're hoping to get to attract more young people because they have the attention span of a flea? Is that what this is all about?
I mean, I think it's, yes. I think it's just in general trying to stay relevant. I mean, I certainly think you can't deny the fact that while baseball might be America's pastime, it's certainly not its present compared to the NFL. And even, I don't know what viewership and the ratings for the World Series is compared to the NBA Finals. And so I would have to look up what the actual ratings are, because I think we know that it's dominant for the NFL. But when it comes to the hierarchy between NHL, NBA, and MLB, like, where do the ratings fall, especially for big games?
We have a call at 844-967-2789. Ben from Oshkosh, checking in on As Goes Wisconsin. What do you want to say, Ben?
Hey, guys. I was watching the Brewers Cactus League the other day, and from my understanding, the back of the bases is in the same position. And with the bigger bases, that actually shrinks the infield. And then, the faster pacing, which I think is just a way to get more advertising. I doubt it's something that the Players Union asked for.
Did you notice a game? Like, was it noticeable when you were watching? Like, could you feel the game clipping along at a faster pace?
They have a giant countdown clock, like, right behind the batter. And it feels rushed. It feels like they're taking the romance away from the game. And I really hope they don't use these new rules for the Field of Dreams game that they have in the fall.
Oh, that's a really good point. Thanks for the call, Ben. That's what I mean. I feel like for people who are baseball purists,
yes,
this is going to be a struggle to adjust to. But that's also the same thing. It's also the same, and now it's not as violent. But I hear all the time people talk about the difference of the NFL in the 80s and how much more like gladiators it was then versus what is now. And I'm like, well, is such a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing.
It's still pretty violent.
Yes.
People still, like, someone almost died this year.
They still get way hurt.
All right. Well, that will do it for our first hour. When we come back, Professor John Shelton will be here to talk about his new book. And then after that, we'll talk about organ donors. You should do it. And is there more to it than just signing up at the DMV? That was like my first question, because I actually don't know if there's another step besides like, yes, I will do this. Yes, I have to wear glasses. All right. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Stay tuned.
Direct from the Dairy State, it's Extra Sharp Weekends, a 3-hour block of Wisconsin-produced radio, Saturdays and Sundays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m., featuring Raised in Wisco with Joel Clayfish and Danielle Thurman, The Crepescast with Charlie Behrens, and Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown. Enjoyed by the slice or enjoy the whole darn block. Extra Sharp Weekends is radio so fresh, it squeaks. Listen in on the Civic Media Station or on the app.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden.
Hey, John.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, it worked. Did I just send you the wrong link before?
No, I don't have. I had to download Chrome because I have a Mac. No, I think the last time we did this, we used something else, so I wasn't.
We used Zoom before. But all right, well, cool. So then I can see you. So now we'll come back in about 2 minutes. But pretty straightforward. Just talking about the book, talking about you. All my questions are probably things that you already know a lot about because you wrote this book. And yeah, so we'll go until the first break is at 12:18 or 12:19, and then we'll have a 2-minute break, and then we'll come back.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Scott McDonald was found unresponsive along a trail on February 17th. He was pronounced dead by National Park Service search and rescue personnel. I'm Jane McNair. This is Civic Media News.
A gray day out there. Holy moly.
Yes, it is. And can I just throw this out? If your wipers are on, your lights must be on.
Yeah, you're always.
That's a state law.
This is maybe a generational thing. It's not a checklist thing for me of do I need to turn my lights on or not? Because it's just once it's dark, it turns on. So I am totally guilty of that.
Because this is who I am. I saw a truck this morning, and so I called. I did. And I just said, look, he's not driving recklessly or anything, but I just want you to know, and maybe you should tell all your drivers that it is a state law that if your wipers are on, your lights must be on, because when it's raining, it's hard to see you.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin! Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome to the noon hour. Thank you for joining us during your lunch hour. We have lots of good guests for the rest of the show. Going to keep rolling on through. And make sure, if you're driving, that you have your lights on because it is raining out still, I think, across most of the state. Do you have any, before we get to our first guest, do you have any updates on the roads?
Just on the roads. And again, this is from 511wi.gov, really useful website that shows you accidents all around the state. Still around Green Bay, Ashwaubenon, and Appleton for right now. So just be careful. If temps start to slip a little bit, it could get dicey as things get a little icier. So,
all right. Well, up in that neck of the woods is where our next guest lives. John Sheldon is a professor at UW Green Bay, a union activist, and an author. And his new book, The Education Myth: How Human Capital Trumped Social Democracy, argues that American politicians have overemphasized education as a magical solution to economic inequality at the expense of other reforms that maybe would help that a little bit more, like making labor organizing easier, or the right to a job, or universal health care. So welcome back to the show, John Sheldon.
Thanks, Kristen. It's great to be here. And I am looking out my window right now, and I can tell you the roads are getting kind of bad. I haven't been outside today, but be
Okay.
careful, especially if you're up here in Northeast Wisconsin.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update from Green Bay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super excited about. I haven't gotten a chance to. I've flipped through a little bit of the PDF, but the topic itself seems really interesting. So, what was the inspiration to start researching this topic?
Yeah, so there were really two things. I've been a professor at UW Green Bay, of course, and so work with a lot of undergraduate students. And, I was really, to a large degree, inspired by them because when I was having classes with them, probably 2014, 2015, 2016, a lot of our students, they came to college, kind of thinking this is something that they had to do. Many of them wanted to be there, of course, right? And I like to think the ones in my classes wanted to be there. but their kind of long-term economic outlook was pretty pessimistic. Actually, it was the sort of that these things they had been promised, that you get a college degree and you get a good job and it's going to work out for you. They're pretty iffy about that, even though they kind of knew you to some extent do need a college degree. So that was number one. But then number two was when the election of 2016 happened, and our entire political system was upended by the election of Donald Trump. And so I started looking at some of the data that came out of that. And one of the biggest pieces of data that defined Clinton voters and Trump voters was whether they had college degrees. And that was one of the biggest gaps between those two voters. And so I started thinking about, let's take a deeper look at this. And so the result is, kind of tracing this question of education through American history. What have Americans wanted out of it? What have they hoped to get out of it? And what does it promise them? And as you sort of alluded to in the description of the book, what I found is that in the past 40 or 50 years, too many politicians have basically told people, go out and get the right education and everything else will kind of fall into place, at the same time that they were sort of either dismantling, systems that had protected working people, or not doing anything to help people as new needs arose. So, one example of that, this is right now, this year is the 30-year anniversary of the inauguration of Bill Clinton. And one of the big chapters in the book looks at the Clinton years and kind of points out that at the same time that Clinton was negotiating NAFTA, actually over the objections, North American Free Trade Agreement, which caused a lot of pain for working people, especially here in Wisconsin, over the objections of Democrats and organized labor. He was also working through his administration to, create new education policies. And the argument was, we have to do this in order to retrain people. I mean, he almost literally says this, to retrain people for the jobs they're going to lose because of NAFTA, right? So don't worry about what's happening to your blue collar jobs. You're going to get an education and everything's going to be fine. And, that was, really a sort of big moment that, continued a trajectory that was already in place, but pushed the nation even further toward kind of taking for granted the livelihoods of blue collar people. And I think with some pretty dire results in the years since.
And so when you're talking about education, are you mostly looking at going to college, or is it the whole K through 12, the whole gamut?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really it's bigger than just college, right? So there's been some other really good books that have come out recently that just sort of look at universities, and Will Bunch's book, which just came out, that some people might know, effectively kind of argues that college education has divided people, and that's really sort of where the locus of this division comes from. But what I look at in the book is I look at education really from K-12 all the way through tech college, technical degrees, and the university system, and kind of say it's really this overall promise of education that if we can just bend our schools to the needs of employers, and that's from the elementary school level all the way through universities, then we can make sure that working people are prosperous. And that's a very recent development in American history, actually. So when you go back to the 19th century, and our country was really the first country in the world to promise sort of universal public education, at least through elementary school. And when this was all done on sort of state by state level in the 19th century, but when education reformers were pushing for this, they weren't talking about getting people jobs. They were talking about training people to be responsible citizens in a democracy. All kinds of problematic assumptions about that, right? I mean, African Americans were largely excluded from that promise in many parts of the country. But the promise itself was about sort of education for democracy. And it's really only, again, in the last 40, 50, 60 years that this whole narrative has been constructed that what the education system is for is to train people for jobs. That's a very new thing. And I think, again, there's some pretty problematic consequences that have come from us as a society kind of accepting that.
Our guest is John Shelton, a professor at UW Green Bay, out with a new book, The Education Myth: How Human Capital Trumped Social Democracy.
And so with that, like for you, when you're arguing or when you're researching this and arguing, is it simply the change that education is now trying to feed workers, or is it also coupled, like, is that by itself a bad change, or is it because that promise has replaced these other movements?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, that's a terrific question, and it's really the latter more than the former, right? It's
Okay.
so what I show in the book, right, is for most of American history, when you have industrialization in the late 19th century, and you've got this significant labor conflict and economic inequality during the Gilded Age, right? Child labor, all of these things that people think about when they think about the late 19th century. The primary way that Americans, working people, kind of took aim at that wasn't by saying, hey, we need to get the job skills to succeed in the marketplace. What they were doing was organizing unions and pushing for reforms, like Social Security. And much of those things came to fruition in the 1930s and 40s, at least in a sort of partial level. And so the big kind of central premise of American politics from that point in the 30s through the 40s, 50s, into the 60s was around this principle of sort of a broad group of social and economic reforms to make workers' lives better, right? And that's why we have this significant decrease in economic inequality in the 1950s. But this sort of group of economists in the 1950s and 60s coined the term, out of the University of Chicago, coined the term human capital. And that's in the subtitle of the book. And the idea behind human capital, and their argument, was that what had actually made American workers more prosperous wasn't that they had labor unions or that, tax rates on the wealthy were, super high in the 1950s. They were like 93, top marginal rate was 93% in the 50s. But what had made them prosperous was that they had gotten more education, that they had more skills. Now that was true, right? More Americans were getting more education. But, what that sort of narrative did is it kind of crept into the public mainstream, the political mainstream, and started to sort of compete with this other narrative that what you needed to do was have these sort of broader reforms. And so in the 1960s, the Johnson administration was sort of this schizophrenic reform effort, right? On the one hand, they pushed for Medicare and Medicaid, right? That's where we get that, is in the Johnson years, right? These sort of universal, or at least partially universal programs. And at the same time, though, a lot of those Johnson policies were about helping poor people get skills. That was their argument, is that they weren't ready for the workforce. Well, the reality is most poor people in the 60s were poor because there weren't jobs near them, not because they lacked the skills. And so those two kind of ideas, sort of competed with each other into the 60s and 70s. Reformers, people like Martin Luther King's widow, Coretta Scott King, fought for a jobs guarantee in the 1970s. But politicians really in the 70s and beyond, especially Democrats, because the political landscape of the country was changing, sort of said, you know what, actually, we don't have to have these big ideas anymore, right? We can and just invest in education, and then we don't have to deal with any of these sort of politically contentious ideas like expanding labor rights and other kinds of social guarantees. So that's kind of the long way of answering your question. It's about the fact that politicians pushed education at the expense of all these other things, right? Education in itself, of course, is not bad, and education does prepare people for jobs, right? I mean, of course it does.
That's so interesting. And so when we have to take a break, but when we come back, because I know you said that there's parts in the book, you talk about the Wisconsin idea, you talk about Tommy Thompson, the Walker years, and kind of like, as always, how Wisconsin finds its way in national movements often. And so when we come back, we will still be with John Shelton, who's a professor at UW Green Bay. And we're talking about his new book, The Education Myth: How Human Capital Trumped Social Democracy. Stay tuned. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
A powder face on a painted fool. Let me slip through. Why you trying to hold me back? I'm just trying to move up front, little more this, little less of that. Let me come through. I'm tired of being in the back. I'm just trying to move up front, little more this, little less.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair, and we are talking to John Shelton, who is a professor at UW Green Bay. And we're talking about his new book, The Education Myth, How Human Capital Trumped Social Democracy. And before we were talking about kind of the argument that at the expense of other labor movements and protecting different things that we know work when it comes to mitigating income inequality and wealth disparities, there was this like doubling down on education. That like as long as you go to school, that will solve it. And we all know with student loans and everything that we're like where we're living today, that is not the case. There's plenty of people who go to very good schools and then still don't feel like the economic promise that they were told is happening. But part of the book, you also said that there's a lot of Wisconsin pieces in there. So what is like starting with the Wisconsin idea?
Yeah, so the book, I kind of use Wisconsin as like a ground level. So the book is kind of bird's eye, right? And I use Wisconsin as sort of a ground level example. And of course, as the whole premise of this show indicates, right? Like Wisconsin is integral in national politics. So I start actually with the Wisconsin idea. And, you know, if there's one thing I could put a moratorium on in our state, it's the abuse of the idea of the Wisconsin idea, right? The abuse of that term. Because what the Wisconsin idea was really about wasn't like partnerships with tech companies, right? What the Wisconsin idea was about using evidence and using scholarship to connect with the public and solve social and economic problems. So when the Wisconsin idea was formed in the late 19th century, early 20th century, read my friend Chad Goldberg's book about this, and he really gets into a lot of this, professor at Madison. It really was about doing something about the economic and social inequality that was really there in the beginning of the Gilded Age, right? And the university folks who came up with that idea were pretty transparent about that, and they connected with politicians like Robert La Follette and said, let's put some of these ideas into practice. We actually have the Wisconsin idea to think in part for things like workers' compensation, graduated income tax, Social Security. They all have connections to the state of Wisconsin. And so, that's an idea that goes back into our state's history, but also speaks to how many Americans actually thought about education before this kind of era of the education myth. And what's happened, I kind of already talked about the argument of the book, but there are places where Wisconsin really fits into this. So like in the 1990s, Tommy Thompson came up with this thing called the New Wisconsin Idea, which largely was about meeting the workforce needs of employers, right? It was the sort of the Scott Walker trial balloon thingy, before that actually happened. It convened this whole, commission to study it. And that's sort of what they recommended, was to help overcome poverty by getting people, the right education. That was the whole premise. And so that structured our politics, right? And one of the reasons I argue that we got Walker is because of a lot of the resentment that blue collar working people in this state felt toward that sort of argument about like, hey, if NAFTA is, outsourcing your jobs, sending them to other countries, and your factory's closing down, just go get the right education, right? And so Walker really kind of effectively mobilized some of that resentment. It's not the only reason for Walker, but it's something we should pay attention to.
That's so interesting. And so with in all the amount of time we have left, which is about 3 minutes, but like, what is there a shift, or is there a policy, or is there something that you recommend by the end of the book as far as is it changing our opinion about school? Is it just bolstering these other policies?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So when I wrote this book, I believe in the Wisconsin idea, and the Wisconsin idea is, when you're doing this kind of work, connect it in a framework that ordinary people can understand, that they don't have to have a PhD to read this book. So it's really pitched toward everybody. And the idea is, let's have a paradigm shift in terms of how we think about education. Number one, let's stop tailoring it to the workforce needs of employers. Let's start thinking about education as doing something broader, and arming our citizens to deal with the misinformation that exists out there, and helping them to be good citizens, and training people to run for local office, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one. Let's do that with our education system. Let's move past these era of bad education policies like No Child Left Behind for good. But more importantly than that, this is something that I want, especially people on the left, especially Democrats, to think about. Stop telling people that getting an education is all that they need to get a good life, right? What we actually need is a system that centers the livelihoods of working people in every single argument we make, every single policy that we make. We need a paradigm shift toward that. So let's center the idea that every single person should have a good job, right? Maybe even think about big ideas like a universal jobs guarantee, so everybody knows they're going to have a job. Let's think about things like universal health insurance, and let's think about making it much easier for workers to organize. And by the way, many of those young people, Kristen, that you mentioned, who are getting college degrees and not finding the great jobs they thought they were going to get, they're organizing unions at places like Starbucks. We got to make it easier for them to do that, so that they can have, sort of more control, more democracy in their own workplaces. And, I think if we do this, if we center the livelihoods of working class people and the contributions that everybody, whether they work in a Starbucks or work in a, small manufacturing outfit here in Green Bay, feels valued, and feels like they have a secure future, that's going to do a lot to heal the political divisions we have in our state, and help people deal with this, really contentious level of, just disinformation that we see on social media, and hopefully reinvigorate our democracy. So I really, really think it's important for people nationally to take this to heart, but especially in our state.
Well, you convinced me. But
One
quickly,
down, one down.
yeah, one down. For other people you might have convinced on this segment, where can they get the book?
So you can get the book from Cornell University Press. I promise it's written in a way that anybody can read this. That was very much my intention. You can also get it at the national bookseller online, who should be nationalized, whose name I won't mention, but it is available there.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, I will link that in today's show notes. John Shelton, thank you so much for joining us. This book sounds fascinating, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Kristen. Enjoy the rest of the show.
All right. Stick around. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Hey, thank you.
If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair. And this next topic, Jane, you came across this.
We had received an email from someone who was with an organ donation support group and wanted us to run some PSAs about organ donation. And I thought, well, why don't we talk to some of the people who actually do that and find out more specifics about what's involved and what can be used and what you could give now.
And what most of us don't know as far as just being the general public. So we are joined by Colleen McCarthy, who's the VP of Versity Organ and Tissue Donation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about donation.
So I think that it's one of those things where I feel like you hear about it. You hear about kidney transplants and lung transplants and stuff like that. But what is kind of, if you can put it into context of what the need is, either in Wisconsin or even nationally, for wait lists?
Oh, sure. You know, the really interesting thing about organ donation to me is that it is so incredibly rare. It is such a rare opportunity. And so when we look at the national need, there are over 105,000 people on the national waiting list.
Say it again?
105,000 people.
Thousand.
And to take that even a little bit down a level, every 9 minutes, another person is added to the waiting list, and every day 17 people die. So over 100,000 people, that list is constantly changing and evolving because people are not getting their transplant in time. And so when we take a look at how many deaths occur in the United States on an annual basis, almost 3 million deaths every year, but only 15,000 organ donors last year. So that need is so incredibly great. And we just do not have enough organs to save those that are on the national waiting list.
So when you say 15,000 donors, that's a combine of people who can donate something that you can donate and still live through. But then also people who've died and were organ donors and saying, if I'm dead, you can take my organ.
Oh, good question. Good
That's
question.
combined?
It's just deceased donors.
Okay.
So 15,000 deceased donors, which really is just a very, very rare opportunity for such an amazing gift.
And is that number seems really low to me.
Mm-hmm. It is. And one of the reasons that number is so low is that in order for somebody to be a deceased organ donor, the person has to pass away in a hospital on a ventilator. So that's the first criteria. So on a ventilator in a hospital. And then after that, we also evaluate one of the critical criteria for donation is, did brain death occur? So all cessation of the entire brain due to an injury. So pass away in a hospital on a ventilator and be brain dead. And so that number that really brings down the potential number of organ donors. And then after that, we assess for medical suitability, are organs safe for transplant? And then we talk to the family, and not every family says yes. And that's what we hope to increase awareness of, is for people to understand what an incredible gift it is and the meaning that it can give to donor families through their healing process, knowing their loved one could save a life.
Colleen, I'm baffled as to why the requirement that you be in a hospital on a ventilator in order to be considered a suitable donor.
Oh, good question, Jean. So in order for organs to be functioning and to maintain viability for transplant, a person needs to be on a ventilator, and that ventilator gives oxygen to the body. So even when the person's brain stops working, they're declared brain dead, their body is still maintained in the ICU on a ventilator. So their body's getting oxygen, and that's what keeps their organs functioning until we can find a recipient that's a good match for them.
Wow. And so and it goes back to the families. So this was going to be my question, because I feel like every time I have to update my driver's license, there's that box of do you want to be an organ donor? And I feel like it's usually next to do you wear eyeglasses? and I check the box. And so I think by default, I am an organ donor. I didn't realize all those other conditions had to be if I were to pass, all those other things have to happen too. But is that enough?
It's a very, very important first step to make your wishes known, to designate yourself as an organ donor. And you can do that when you get your driver's license. You can do it online as well to join the Wisconsin registry. But we always encourage people don't just stop at that action. Also talk to your family. When we meet families in the hospital, you can imagine it is the worst day of their life. These families are in crisis and they're grieving, and we are thrown into their lives at a very difficult moment. And so one of the things we talk to families about is what their loved one wanted. And when we can share with them that your loved one made the decision to be an organ donor, they're going to be a hero. That gives them peace. It takes the burden off of them to make another decision at that time. But sometimes when a person is not a registered organ donor, the family has to make that decision. And you can imagine that's not an optimal time to make very important decisions. And so it's not just enough to sign up to be a donor. We encourage people, we want people to do that, but also to share that decision with your family. Let them know what your wishes are.
Our guest is Colleen McCarthy. She's the VP of Versiti Organ and Tissue Donation, and we're talking about becoming an organ donor, who can be a donor, any kind of questions. And if you have a question, you can always text us or give us a call at 844-967-2789. Colleen, my father was a mortician, and we used to talk all the time about how important it is, and the best thing that you can do for the people that you're going to leave behind are to set up your arrangements in advance. And this is just another piece of that. Talking to them that you want to be an organ donor, this is what you want, right? It's just taking that burden off of your remaining family members so that it's been decided. You made your decisions, and here's what they are.
You're right. It's part of healthcare decisions when we fill out our advanced directives, what we want to happen at end of life. Donation is naturally a part of that. And so it's not an easy topic to think about. And I think that's what prevents people from potentially signing up is to think about end of life and make some of those hard decisions. But it's part of your healthcare decision making process. It's a very important aspect to consider.
And so, what else do you feel like the public should know? It feels like like I said, you check the box. You can also sign up through Versiti, right?
That's right. Yes. There is a Wisconsin registry, and you can sign up on donatelifewisconsin.org and also on versiti.org as well. There's patient stories on there, donation information, all at your fingertips to help get yourself all informed so you can make a decision that's right for you.
And what are some of because there's certainly, you can guess, transplants and organ donations that if you donate it, you no longer can be alive. So like a heart transplant or something like that. But then obviously there's things like kidney transplants. And so, or I assume like bone marrow transplants. And so what are some of the things for people who are alive and also could, whether it's different tissue or organs that people need, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be deceased?
Sure. There, besides just deceased donation, there's also options for living donors as well. And the biggest need in the United States for a transplant is kidney. So a person who is healthy and has 2 kidneys can be able to donate one of their kidneys to save a life and get somebody off that dialysis machine and give them a second chance. So living donors are able to donate kidneys. You mentioned bone marrow. That's an opportunity as well. And even in some situations, they can donate a small portion of their liver for another patient too.
Oh, that's so interesting. And so Versiti, I knew you guys, I knew less about the organ and tissue donations because as I told you at the break, that's where, my joke about when I was at the blood donation and I won because I'm competitive. That was through Versiti too. And so is this, what else do you guys, what is like as Versiti as an organization? So there's obviously the donation for organs and tissue. There's blood donations. Is there anything else that you guys do?
Yes. Versiti is a big organization, and our footprint is in 5 states. And so we have a world-renowned blood research institute. We also have a diagnostic lab. Our blood services is our biggest service line, and thank you for donating blood. We appreciate that. And the blood that you donate typically stays here in Wisconsin for patients in need. So important. And then we also have our organ and tissue donation service line as well.
Great. And so I guess what do you find that's through the patient stories is the best awareness to connect with people to understand the importance of what like the gift they can give to someone?
Oh, absolutely. I I think about some of the donor families that we've taken care of over the years, and they are incredible people, just amazing people, so generous, and to know that they thought of others at the worst moment of their life. Their generosity, their kind spirits, all of that is just remarkable. It's humbling, and so part of our organization is responsibility is to support our donor families after their donation and after their loss. And so we have an aftercare program where we stay in touch with our donor families. We can facilitate communication between recipients and donor families as well. And even on some rare occasions, we've been able to coordinate meetings between families and recipients. And it is just the most amazing thing to see. And what it reinforces to me how donation helps these people get through their journey of grief. It gives them peace. It gives them comfort years down the road. And I'd want that for all families, to have that extra comfort during some really difficult times and during grief.
And too, as we were saying before, Colleen, I just think if you can talk to your family about it, get it in your will, make sure they understand your wishes, and then explain why you want to do this. The whole potential of someone being able to see out through my eyes, or just, have a heart, or whatever, that makes me happy. The potential for that. And I think, as squeamish as this might make people, and I understand why, but you got to look at the bigger picture. You have to look at the bigger result of this gift that you've chosen to give, and hopefully get your family on board that way too. Because like you said, if it's not in your wishes and it's not in your will, I can understand the pushback by some families, maybe just not understanding the difference that this can make.
You're right. Jane, when we talk to families and their loved one did not register, it's very difficult for them. And many times families say no because they just didn't know. They feel like if their loved one wanted to do this, they would have registered, but it's just not necessarily something people think about.
Yeah.
And so anything we can do to inspire people to sign up, share more patient stories, donor family stories, that really shows the human side of it, that shows the incredible gift that donation is. And hopefully it encourages people to sign up and give that gift of life.
Are there any donor patient stories that you want to share?
Oh, I do. I have, I think the most amazing story to share, and this happened in 2018, and it was really incredible, and I think it's a highlight of my career here in organ and tissue donation. And it was a story of one of our donors. His name is Dylan, and his mom has shared this story publicly, and his mom's name is Rachel, and Dylan was 24 years old when he died suddenly. And his mom, Rachel, wanted to donate his organs, her son's organs. She felt very strongly that that was the right thing to do. And the heart recipient, her name is Nikia. And Nikia had, she was very sick and would likely not have much more time to live without that transplant. And she received Dylan's heart, and she wanted to give a gift to her donor family. And so she got one of those Build-A-Bears, and she took it to her doctor appointment, and she had a recording of Dylan's heart beating inside of her. And she wanted to give this amazing gift to her donor family. And so when we had the opportunity to coordinate that, both families decided that they would meet in person so that Nikia could give that gift to her donor family. And so we were able to coordinate this, and these families, which is, this meeting, you can imagine the emotion.
Oh my gosh, I'm
it.
crying already.
I know. They opened this up for people to be part of. And this meeting occurred at St. Luke's Advocate Aurora in their healing garden. So this beautiful setting where a lot of families take some time for having peace and comfort. And they coordinated this meeting, and Rachel, who's the donor mom, she wore a black sweatshirt, and it said, "Stop heroin now." So, you can imagine seeing her son go through addiction, and she, publicly had this saying on, and she shared that she said, give your addict's life more worth. And so for her, the ending to her son's story wasn't this tragedy. The ending to Dylan's story was that he was a hero and saved Nikia's life. And so Rachel's listening to her son's heart beat inside Nikia, and she says, "Oh, it sounds so strong." And to just see what that did for those families. Nikea's parents were there, and Dylan's parents were there, and they were there together because Dylan saved her life, and it was just a beautiful moment.
Oh, what an emotional story. Thank you so much for joining us, Colleen. Colleen McCarthy is the VP of Versity Organ and Tissue Donation. We will link all of the information to our show notes today of how you can become an organ donor. Stay tuned. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Well, welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair. Have you recovered?
I was just a mess.
That story. Oh my.
Yeah, I
Well,
was
you know,
just a mess.
It's an incredible story, and I'm sure that's one of many. But 15,000.
Isn't that
Didn't that
shocking?
shock you?
Yes, it really did. It really did.
And I guess I don't know. I feel like most of us at this point, when you ask us, I mean, are you signed up to be an organ? Like, as far as
It's on my license. It's in.
yeah, it's
in
on my license too.
And I know my husband knows.
So now I feel like I got to tell my husband
Yeah, you should.
and my parents, and be like,
You should.
This is what I want.
This is what I want.
But also just the additional conditions
Right. That I did not
limit
know.
the
Circumstances.
of who finally of the deceased donors. That was so interesting as far as just things that I don't think you ever think about unless you work in the medical industry or you have someone who's on a waiting list.
And don't you think too? Unfortunately, I think sometimes, as we do in so many things, it's like somebody else is going to do it. Someone else is already a donor. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to do it. But as Colleen just pointed out, we have over 100,000 people on waiting lists,
Yeah.
and annually only 15,000 donors. That's not.
That math doesn't math.
No, that's not good math.
And because I mean, I had always heard that the waiting list for so many of these things is years.
Can be.
And so, but the other person who got a donation through them is Derek Mosley, Judge Derek Mosley. When I was doing my background to figure out, what do we want to questions we want to ask, one of their patient stories on their homepage is him and his donor.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so
What-
check what
What was the donation?
I can't remember off
Okay.
the top of my head. It was I I don't know if it was a kidney, but it was interesting because I remember when we first interviewed him, not the most recent time for Black History Month, but the time in November, he had a very public transplant. This was before I moved to Milwaukee, but then he got COVID. And so like his like public health issues that
Oh, wow.
he's talked about publicly and stuff. But yeah, so he's on the webpage for that. And so certainly check out Versity. We'll link all this stuff today, but on their webpage you can sign up
right there.
And so if you don't trust the check mark on your license, like I now don't necessirily trust
Well,
mine.
I agree with you on that. Now I'm
I
gonna
know, right?
just sign up twice just to make sure.
Be doubly sure. Well, just quickly to end the noon hour, as always, thank you for spending your lunch with us, everyone who did. This just made me giggle. It also makes sense. But people who work in finance, especially people who are accredited to be able to give financial advice because it is a regulated industry because you're in charge of people's money. Now you can't get around that you can't claim ignorance or claim, well, it was just an emoji when giving financial advice.
There are financial advisors who are using emojis to express their financial advice.
So emojis are investment advice, federal court rules. Some emojis used by Dapper Labs suggested a return on investment. And it was the emojis used. So it was the rocket ship. If you can think of what that looks like.
I can see that.
Then there's the little chart, like the up and to the right chart emoji.
Oh, so a graph going up?
A graph going up.
Okay.
And then like a little bag of money.
A rocket ship to money.
And so the federal court said that specifically those three count as investment advice. And a New York District Court judge wrote in a filing that even when the word profit isn't directly mentioned, the emojis, quote, objectively mean one thing, a financial return on investment. And so he was reading the tweets of a non-fungible token company, so NFT, if we remember those. They're not, I feel like in general, all these buzzwords from 2022 are not as buzzy anymore.
As they were.
But non-fungible token company called Dapper Labs, which is being sued over whether its NBA Top Shot NFTs should be registered as securities. And Dapper's a big mark, and the sales of the tokenized game highlighted clips that exceed $1 billion. I know this gets into NFTs and like the value, and especially even with some of them losing value, but it's different crypto blockchain world. So the suit claims that the NFTs gained or lost value depending on the success of Dapper's blockchain, making them more akin to securities like stocks and bonds than collectibles like baseball cards and Beanie Babies. And that kind of gets away from the point of the emojis, but the court hasn't actually ruled on the state of the NFTs yet, but it did refuse to dismiss the case in the ruling that cited the emojis. And so if it ultimately does find that Dapper's NFTs are securities, it could prompt regulators to take a hard look at other NFTs. So like this is a funny story baked inside, I think, a bigger story as far as the continuing of like, what do we do with blockchain technology and NFTs and stuff like that. But just the fact brokers and financial advisors beware, you're not getting out of your responsibilities. Like, I didn't give that advice if you're like, bye, but only in emoji speak.
Nice try, though. That was a good effort to get around it.
What would be the equivalent for like legal advice? What emojis would it be like? The justice. I'm trying to think what even would work as far as I'm not really giving you legal advice if I'm just sending this through emoji speak. But yeah, I saw that this morning. I thought it was pretty funny. What's your best emoji? What's your go-to?
Well, and now all I can think of is a rocket ship with a chart going up and an eggplant for whatever reason.
An eggplant. I like how you added an eggplant instead of the bag of money. You're like eggplant.
But that's all.
Seems like a sex act,
Well,
Jane.
then that's kind of my understanding of what that emoji stands for.
Yeah, it's kind of. I don't know if that was the original intention when it was first created, but
Probably
it certainly
not.
is now. I'm just gonna if I said legal, there's 3 different kinds of lawyers that pop up, like a female lawyer, a male lawyer, and a judge. And so
For the
that's
legal
for
emojis.
legal. Let's see, law. Law, police officers pop up. Yeah, there's not as much. It's not as fun as money. Money, money,
And
money.
I just like non-fungible as a word.
It is a good word.
It's a wonderful, it just has a good mouthfeel.
But that is interesting. I should get my brother to come talk to us about that. Because I always thought of an NFT as, an image that can't be replicated, and thus its value.
Right.
Because on the internet, things you save as, and you constantly can take images, and it's really easy. So I would have always thought of it more as like a collectible baseball card versus something that gains and loses value like a stock. But that's not my area of expertise whatsoever.
You can only be
we'll
good
have
at
to get
so
someone
many
else to come
things.
talk about that. All right. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Tania Fisher's here to talk about Social X MKE's new event, Inspire Her. Stick around. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Signed a bill into law
Hello.
giving him control of Walt Disney World's
How you doing?
self-governing district.
I'm good. How are you?
The company
Good.
for its opposition
Good.
Getting
to
through
the
this
law,
rainy Monday,
opponents have
but
labeled
we're surviving.
Don't Say Gay.
I know.
We
Yeah,
want
I
our
got out of
kids to
bed
be
and I'm at
kids.
work, so
We
that's
want them to
a
be
plus.
able to
That's
enjoy
a win.
entertainment
A win is a win.
without having
All
an
right. Well, I already
agenda
shared the questions
imposed
with you,
upon
so we'll
them.
come back
And
at like
if you're going
106,
that way
Okay.
as
and then I
a
got you till
corporation,
119,
those are
and we'll just
not
power through
the
those questions.
values that we
Okay,
want to
perfect.
promote in the
All
state
right.
of
Sounds good.
Florida.
Yellow point.
Thank you.
Welcome to the 1 o'clock no sour haha funny hour. We are back on the no sour haha funny power hour. What is it, Greg?
The No Sour Fun Time Haha Power Hour. Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome to the No Sour Fun Time Haha Power Hour.
Ooh, she did it.
I got it. This is the 1 o'clock hour where we have some fun. We shed ourselves of the heavier topics. We don't make Jane cry. And we highlight some human interest stories and fun things that are happening around Wisconsin. And so our guest for this first segment is Tania Fisher, who's back. This is her second time on the show. She's an educator, an activist, an ASICS ambassador, and the director of health and wellness for Social X MKE, which is a diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting group. And they have a very fun event coming up in April that I wanted her to come talk to us about. Welcome back, Tania.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about Inspire Her.
Okay, so Inspire Her was created last year. So this is our second annual. It was created to highlight women of color and to celebrate our health, our wellness, and to educate our physical, emotional well-being. So we have a number of sessions, panel discussions, fireside chats that I'm super excited about.
And it's April 9th, right?
It is March 11th. Saturday, March 11th. Sorry.
Where did I get April 9th from?
I
was looking at something on the website and I grabbed April 9th. Scratch that, ignore it. March 11th.
Yes.
It's much sooner.
Yes, very soon. 2 weeks. So Saturday, March 11th, and it will be at Direct Supply, the Northside campus. So it's a beautiful event. It's really exciting.
And so what, from last year, what went well that you feel like what was your most memorable parts from last year that made you want to do the event again?
I think just the connection between women and being able to be very vulnerable with each other. I think that was something that was something that resonated with me. And that's why we wanted to make sure that we brought it back. We do have different sessions this year. So there is some spanking new things to be on the lookout for. And then there's some things that just stuck and worked really well that we'll be keeping in for this year.
So what does the schedule look like?
So we'll open up with a fireside chat about the beauty within. I know it's very hard to look at yourself and look at social media and to be able, to see yourself, your natural beauty as being okay and more than okay, like being acceptable and feeling great within yourself. So we're going to talk about that. And then we have a affirmation session. We have some meditating sessions. We also have some professional development ways. So for women about investing and how they can invest in themselves and how women are becoming the breadwinners in their households now and how we could just tap in and get more information on that. And then we have more breakout sessions about protecting yourself. So we'll actually have some techniques, in-ground physical techniques for women to learn and know what to look out for while protecting themselves. And then we'll end up with the Boss Up panel discussion for all these women bosses out here. They'll get to discuss things they went through because they wasn't always a boss. So things that they went through to get to that status, barriers they still may be overcoming within that. And I love how that just wraps up everything and puts a nice little bow on top of it. Everybody feeling good and high.
Absolutely.
Tania, I'm so glad you're having a physical protection aspect to your event, because even 30 years ago, when I was doing stories about women taking self-defense classes and things like that, and I took one myself, women just aren't encouraged to do that. And the practice of punching something, or it's just, there was one mother-daughter couple in this class that I was in, and they would go, So it's important that women can embrace their own ability to protect themselves, I guess is my greater point.
Exactly. And I think what really made us want to feature that as a breakout session is I've been hearing so many women being attacked while running, in which you guys know I'm a runner. So that is something, and I'm advocating for other women to run, and that's really scary. So I'm glad that even myself, I'll be able to learn some techniques and see what I need to be looking out for, some like runner safety and just like in public safety, just, yeah. So I'm excited for it for sure.
And also the first session you listed off as far as the beauty within, I don't think this made its way to Instagram, though it exists on Instagram too. But my TikTok feed this weekend was just full of this new filter. It's called like Bold Glamour on TikTok.
gosh.
And it doesn't look like a filter. Like if you put your hand between your face and the camera, it doesn't like go onto your hand, but it changes your face and it looks like a real person, but it's just like you amped up. Like you, if you looked like an Instagram model, right? And the
Mhm.
makeup and everything like that. And I mean, I could not escape this video and this filter over the weekend. And that was what so much of the videos that I saw is like, this is screwing with our brains of what we're supposed to, like what we could look like if we just tweaked this, if we just wore makeup like that. And I saw one video where she's like, I tried to do my makeup like the app, and I feel like I look really good right now. And then she put on the filter, and she's like, and now I feel like crap. Because
Yeah.
it was just like, it's just like it's perfection to a something that no one actually looks like that.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like, even I think before I post something, like swiping to see which filter I need, because I'm just like me naturally, like, no, people shouldn't see me like that. Or even my, like right now, this is all natural. No. Or
I think you look beautiful, Tania.
thank you. Or even, I just made a transparency post. Like, I just ran, but like I'm bloated all the time. So I have a gut hanging over like my leggings and all this stuff. It's just, so yes, I need to attend. This is all stuff I need to be in. So
Yes. That's what I know. It's such a good variety of topics and all coming back to physical health, mental health. And so we're
Right.
talking to Tania Fisher, who is the Health and Wellness Director for Social X MKE. And they have an event coming up on March 11th called Inspire Her, which is their second annual health and wellness conference for women. And which event which session are you most looking forward to?
Honestly, the session that I love the most is our meditation session. It is so beautiful. Like, we turn down the lights, and Direct Supply does a really good job of like making the stage look all lighty, like purple and orange undertones. And it's just really beautiful to have all the women in there kind of on like one accord and just like quiet and just, thinking about positive things that for the rest of the day, like what we want to see and, what we want to see in the rest of our lives. I just think it's just so powerful in a room of like 50 women, to all hear that. That personally is like my favorite, but I'm really looking forward then today, like on Saturday, I'll be looking forward to hearing the Protect Her series.
Tania, I would love to do a mass meditation session like that, but I know I would be the one who would fall asleep.
Oh, and I encourage it.
Jane just starts snoring in the corner.
Exactly. Right. It's going to be like, who's snoring? It's breaking our zen,
Yeah, our men's one was very powerful and beautiful. And a lot of men were like, man, I was so relaxed. I was about to fall asleep. I'm like, that means we did a good job, right?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to first quickly say, is there any more sponsorship opportunities? I know we're getting close to the event, but still open for
Absolutely.
sponsorships?
Yep. So you could go to socialxmke.com or Instagram, Facebook, SocialX. You could DM us or email any of us our info email. And yes, sponsorship is still available.
And that's the same website where registration is still open for women to attend, right?
Yep. We will have day of registration too as of right now, but it tends to fill up. So I would tell people to hop on it ASAP.
You said what's the cap?
The cap is about 60, 70. So we do pretty good about filling it.
Yeah.
And you get breakfast, lunch. So we want to get that all ordered for you. And I have that all set. So.
Absolutely. And then that's not your only Women's History Month event. You also have another event called Social Exposure.
Yes. So that is March 8th. So maybe you're thinking of that. March 8th. Yes.
International Women's Day?
Yes. That is March 8th. And that's going to celebrate women, all the barriers that they have overcome and how they are continuing to be great women. So I'll highlight 5 women. This is virtual. So you can hop on during lunch. It will begin at 11:45 a.m. And then hop on virtually to hear about all these women, get that little boost to carry you through the day.
Nice. Yeah. Well, we might be on air, so if it's recorded, I'll go back and watch that. But
Absolutely.
That sounds awesome. All right. Well, Tania, this was so fun. I love all the events that you guys do. I feel like I'm due for one. It's been a minute since I've been able to attend one, but you guys do such good work, and these events are so important and very fun. So Tania Fisher, thank you for spending time with us and telling us about the events.
Thank you so much for highlighting us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so Tania Fisher is the Director of Health and Wellness for SocialX MKE, as Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Consulting Group. And it's just socialxmke.org.com. .com. All right. So you can find that on the website and find everything that you would need to do go to the event or any of the other upcoming events. Anything else you want to plug? When does FEAR get started again?
FEAR starts April 11th. So yeah, you could go.
Remind everyone what FEAR is.
FEAR is our running group. So we encourage people of color or all people of all running levels to be able to run in a safe and inclusive space. So that starts April. What did I say? Did I say April 11th? Now
April 11th.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay. Tuesday, April 11th.
Calendar in front of us.
I know so many things, but Tuesday, April 11th. If you still want to hop in a run, I am training for the Paris Marathon. I need help. So if anybody wants to run a leg with me at any point between now and the end of March, feel free to DM me or just shoot Kristen something and connect me. Yeah.
You're running this. I have to text you after this. I didn't know you're running a marathon in Paris.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. All right. Well, Tania Fisher, thank you so much for joining us. We will talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Stick around. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
All right. Bye, guys.
Missed your favorite show live on air? It's easy to find what you enjoy wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And we're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app.
Charged, never convicted. The Devil's Advocates.
Jim Santel for just a few more minutes. As you point out, this is a civil trial, not a criminal trial. You think that the Trump court will end up with the death penalty under New York law?
Letitia James, she's doing the civil case, right? This is a criminal matter.
Oh, it is. So I misunderstood.
It is, yes.
Normally I leave the being wrong to Dom.
Right.
Listen Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. for the Devil's Advocates radio show.
I was just curious as to why you called it the Paul Revere Show.
The Paul Revere Show is named this way because the poem that we all know, the famous Ride, the poem was written to rally the troops to fight slavery and fight for democracy. And so I named the show the Paul Revere Show because I thought it was the time to get on the air and talk about democracy.
The Paul Revere Show with Mark Thompson. Listen Mondays 7 to 8 p.m. always on the Civic Media app.
Weather on this snowy day in Milwaukee could be brought to us by your pizza delivery business. Can you imagine how many families are snuggled in their homes enjoying hot, tasty pizza? Weather makes the phone ring for just $199 per week. Call us at 608-819-8255.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Overcast skies this afternoon with a slight chance for isolated rain showers. High temperatures reach up to 40. Northeasterly winds 8 to 15 miles an hour. Slight chance for scattered showers again tonight. Lows level off around 31. Cloudy skies expected. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times tomorrow. High temperatures reach up to 42. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 36 degrees.
A progressive voice from Beaver Dam to Kenosha. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair. And the Oscars, not this weekend, the following weekend.
Yeah, it's coming
March
fast.
12th. I still have a fair amount to go watch before I don't know.
If you're going to make all of them?
Well, and now I'm trying to think, will I watch? I probably will watch the Oscars. I don't know if Mike will watch it with me. But I also what is it about the Oscars that, I didn't watch the SAG Awards last night.
I didn't either. And those are usually a little looser.
Yeah. And not as long.
And not quite as long. Yeah, the Oscars are long.
And SAG is fun because I feel like, whether you agree with this or not, as far as being film aficionados and feeling like there's so many people who work on a film that deserve credit, from set to costumes to makeup to sound and everything. But, ultimately, the actors are the one who get a lot of, it's the thing as a layperson, you feel like you can judge, even though you know nothing about acting, versus everything else. And so the SAG Awards, I think, are fun because it's more like the Golden Globes where there's also TV and limited series and stuff like that.
Yep.
But I saw this morning because, of course, we can't forget the drama of last year.
Oh, I almost did forget about that.
Did you? Are you being serious? Or are you being sarcastic?
No, I'm serious.
You almost forgot about the slap from last year?
Yeah, maybe I tried to block it out of my brain.
And the weeks of dialogue that it created, as far as you can't talk about a black woman's hair and you should never hit someone and what this oh my God.
What kind of example are you setting?
Yeah. And so this year, the Oscars have a new team to handle real-time crises at the 2023 ceremony. This is not a team that was in place last year, obviously. And the squad created in response to Will Smith's slapping of Chris Rock last year is hopefully just a guy who has a long hook to pull celebs off stage when they are talking to
like the old days.
But in reality, it's a whole team that's like a crisis team. And
okay, I have a question.
Okay.
So if this had been established last year, what would they have done? Because it's not like Will Smith ran up there and you could see that this was coming. Initially, people didn't know if it was a bit, if it was. So what are they going to do? Tackle him?
I don't know. So the Academy President Janet Yeg previously said that the group's response last year was not swift enough. Because think about it. I mean, he was allowed to just continue to sit in the front row.
Right.
And then win and then give his speech where it disrupted the entire night. And I think in reality, I feel like they, especially now that he's been banned for 10 years, that they probably would have been like, you got to go. You are distracting from everything else.
Right.
You are ruining everyone else's night. But the CEO, Bill Kramer, said, we have a whole crisis team, something we've never had before, and many plans in place. We've run many scenarios. So it is our hope that we will be prepared for anything that we may not anticipate right now, but that we're planning for just in case it does happen. What do you think the different scenarios are? And I feel like last year, would it ever have included an actor slapping one of the presenters?
That is so broad. I mean, that can cover what? Nuclear attack? Domestic terrorism?
Someone
bad footwear? I'm not sure what does this all cover.
What reasonably could happen? Another attack of some sort of someone getting in a fight, someone being, they don't serve booze. So it's not like the Golden Globes where unless someone shows up drunk or high.
That it's a big drunk. It's not a big drunken fest.
If someone, but I feel like they probably already have. I mean, that's why last year was so wild, is because no one would have expected that. Even thinking about it now, I still remember watching and be like, what just happened? But so simultaneously, literally week before, so this Saturday, March 4th, is when Chris Rock's live special comes out.
Oh boy. That should be interesting.
Live from Netflix. It's a new Chris Rock stand-up special, March 4th.
Wow.
So it's the very first live event to stream on Netflix, which it will be interesting.
It will.
And it's the first time I'm sure he's been practicing material in comedy clubs where you can't use your phone and stuff like that. He's probably been working on this for the last year. But what'll be interesting, do you think more people will watch in that first week? More people will watch Chris Rock's special than will watch the Oscars?
Yes.
I think so too.
Yeah, absolutely I do.
I think more people are way more interested in to see what he has to say and how he talks about this.
If he talks about it.
Oh, he'll talk about it.
It's no guarantee. You know,
I guess there's no guarantee, but I feel like in the reality of, and maybe we'll bring this up again on Wednesday when Greg's here talking about comics, but I feel like because he talked very openly about his divorce for one of his specials, like I feel like he's very much, as most comedians are, like using your life,
bearing your guts
to write material about. And so I would be very surprised. I feel like, maybe not off the top of my head, but I feel like there's been rumors as far as even when he's been at different clubs practicing stuff, like he's been
working on
material. And so
that's where you go test it out. You take it on the road.
But that was the first conspiracy theory from maybe that's too strong of a word. But if there was malintent besides just like if everyone was kind of in on it, because I feel like then Jada Pinkett Smith ended up having some kind of, because I didn't know she had alopecia until that happened, but then all of a sudden like she was involved in like a advertisement for a new alopecia drug, and now like Chris Rock has a special. So it's like sometimes you just wonder, like, well, did something like this happen just so everyone can make a little bit more money? But I don't want that to be true. Well, all right. What do you know about opera? We're going to learn a lot because a professor of music from the University of Wisconsin just won one of the top awards in opera, and she's going to be joining us to talk about it. Stay with us. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
We're all SOL. Good for us. Congratulations.
Look at all those acronyms. Yeah.
We're the winners.
Are you emailing her?
Tangents every weekday at 2.
I'm Pat Kreitlow from Up North News. On an earlier edition, we talked to 3 women, med students, about whether they're going to stay in Wisconsin to practice medicine.
All this Roe v. Wade stuff, and now OBGYN's hands are so tied. I don't want to go through 12 years of training to have some person that didn't do training tell me how to do my job.
It is not a binary choice. You're for or against abortion. It is a healthcare decision. We all have those stories, and people want to hear them.
Don't miss the real stories here on Up North News.
To protect his family from disaster, Steve used his camera phone.
Done.
By taking pictures of his important documents, Steve can always have them stored online. Learn more simple disaster prep tips at ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry. Jane Madnair is also here per usual, and we are having a little bit of technical difficulty with our next guest, Laura Schwendiger. We're trying to get her on the StreamYard, but unfortunately it says her devices are not connected. So
I did just shoot her an email. Hopefully she's going to see that and can give us a call at 844-967-2789 because she just won this really prestigious award.
yeah, so I don't know, for as much as you and I know about musical theater, I don't know a ton about opera. But when something is referred to as the most prestigious award for opera, a composer and the composer who won is someone who is in Wisconsin, feels like a good conversation that we should have. And
It's
so
pretty cool.
And Professor
Schwendiger.
She's a professor at the Mead Witter School of Music in at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And once we can get her on air, I'm so excited to talk to her more about what the opera was that she won for. And also, she also won the Berlin Prize. She was the first composer to win the Berlin Prize.
Wow.
And so, yeah, really accomplished lady right here in our backyard. And so, but until we do that, we'll try to get her on. But I'm going to let you're just trying to figure
I think we got her.
Oh, great. Well, we are waiting to see if that might be her on the phone. You know, this is, again, live radio is always very fun. And so I think we got her. Jane?
We do. Laura is joining us on the phone. Laura, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm sorry about those technical difficulties. For some reason, the StreamYard wouldn't find my microphone, even though I know I have it because I've been doing Zoom, teaching on Zoom over the last 2 years. So,
well, we got you now.
Well, we got you now, and we're so happy. We were just saying, first of all, so Jane and I are both big musical theater people, but don't necessarily know a ton about opera. And so we have a ton of questions about that. But first of all, congratulations on winning the Charles Ives Opera Prize for your new opera, Artemisia. Did I pronounce that correctly?
That's absolutely right.
Yay! And so what is the opera about?
Well, the opera is about this amazing Baroque era painter. She was really famous in her own time, and you can imagine in the 1500s, late 1500s, it was kind of rare for women to be famous painters. And as such, she painted in her father's studio. Her father was a known artist, and his works are also in major museums in the world. And as a young woman, she was actually raped by her art tutor. And it was a famous trial. It was kind of like the O.J. Simpson trial of the late 1500s, because her rapist was put on trial. she was tortured to verify her testimony. They actually used thumb screws to verify her testimony. And they broke some of her fingers, which is horrible. And in the end, they found for her and they found against her rapist, and she won. And so it was quite a a moment for the truth of women to come through. And then she went on to have an incredible career. She painted for the kings of England and for popes and you name it. She painted incredibly important figures. And her work is in every major museum, really, in the world.
Wow. And how did you come across this story? I've never heard of that story before.
Well, I'm an art lover, and my librettist, the woman that wrote the words for the opera, is an art lover as well. And her name is Ginger Strand. She's also a great author. She's written a lot of books that are quite well known. And Ginger and I actually talked about Artemisia, this kick-ass, wonderful, figure from the Baroque era that just really broke barriers and did these amazing things. And we started reading about her life, and we realized her life was every bit as dramatic, if not more so, than so many operas. And so we thought, why not shine a light on her?
Our guest.
So that's where it went.
Our guest is Laura Schwendinger. She is a composer and the winner of the Charles Ives Opera Prize for her opera Artemisia. And Laura, one of the things Kristen and I were discussing off the air, and one of the things I wanted to ask you, drama is a big driving force behind, so many movies and television shows, and certainly opera is very dramatic. But movies have a animated option. Are there any operas that are just funny?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that, because there are these two traditions in opera. There's opera buffa, which is really funny. Think about the Magic Flute, or Mozart wrote a lot of opera buffa, which is about comic relief, really.
Huh.
And then you have opera seria, which is more serious, and Artemisia actually falls within the more serious area of opera. But I think my librettist and I at some point want to write a really funny opera.
There you go.
You need some whoop 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 boing.
Absolutely.
And so, go ahead.
Oh no, it's just funny that opera does tend to go the more serious route, but some of the most famous opera composers did stuff that was really akin to musical theater now. Mozart, when he was writing the Magic Flute, he was writing for a bunch of people who were just part of the public who came in. They threw tomatoes when they didn't like what was going on. They wooed and, booed, and they did all of that stuff. That was what was happening at the moment. So he was kind of like, he was like the Mick Jagger of his day.
That's so funny to think about.
Those were tough crowds, man.
Right.
Those tomato throwing, banana peel throwing crowds. Woof.
Exactly.
And so, as you said, the comparison with musical theater and opera, and obviously, in most musical theater, there's more spoken word, where in opera there is none. But what for a show where that's considered musical theater, where there's basically no speaking, what really becomes the differentials of something that makes it an opera versus musical theater?
That's a really, really good question, Kristen, because, there are some musical theater pieces which are like modern opera. I mean, West Side Story is, by Bernstein, is an incredible musical theater piece. But a lot of people consider it one of, America's first great operas.
Really?
Of that period. Yeah, and the same thing with, Sondheim musicals. So, Sunday in the Park, or Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
If you saw Sweeney Todd live, you'd say, oh my God, this is operatic. And it is. It has this, depth and kind of bigness that you get in great musical theater, but you also really get in great opera. And the music is really, it's exciting and challenging and orchestral, and it really straddles the line.
It's so interesting that you bring up Sweeney Todd, Laura. I had dinner with a good friend of mine who's a huge theater buff. And Sweeney Todd came up and he said the movie is terrible. Never watch the Johnny Depp Sweeney Todd movie because the musical itself is a far different thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. If you can find it, there are videos of Angela Lansbury playing the main role, and Sweeney Todd, and boy, she was amazing.
I actually have seen that. We watched that in high school, which is funny because that's a musical that probably high school's okay, but much younger than that, I'm not sure you should be watching that show.
So dark.
It's really dark.
Murdering
the guys are made out of something you don't want to talk about, you know?
Well, it's funny that you say Sondheim because that's what I think of. Like my favorite musical almost of all time is Into the Woods. And there's that it really is like I can't really think of many speaking parts. Like if you listen to the soundtrack, you get the entire story. It's not kind of songs that are punctuated, which for me, my experience, I think I've only seen one opera and I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember which one it was, but it is the entire thing is just the expression and through music. And so for you as a composer, what was it that drew you to opera versus an orchestra or different types of music that you could be writing? Like, what was it about this that you were like, well, this is what I'm going to go pursue?
Well, I do write for orchestra and chamber groups. And in fact, I just came back from Atlanta where the principal harpist of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra premiered a concerto of mine with the Emory Orchestra, the Emory University Orchestra, celebrating their 100th anniversary as an orchestra. So I write for kind of everything. I think most opera composers these days do, because there's so much opportunity to have, to express yourself in all sorts of different ways. And there are so many fine chamber groups and so many fine orchestras that to limit yourself is a little weird. But I have to say, when you go down the opera rabbit hole, because operas are big. I mean, they're really big. They're a lot of work. They suck a whole year out of your life, and it's a year you enjoy. But I have to say, it's a lot of work. It's like building a 10-story building with your fingernails. That's what it feels like at times.
Laura, what does winning the Charles Ive Opera Prize for your opera Artemisia, what does that do? What does that mean for you going forward?
Well, it's such a huge deal. I mean, this group of panelists. First of all, it's given by the leading academy of artists, writers, every famous person you can think of that's in the arts, every famous writer, every famous artist, every famous composer sits on that stage and is member of that academy. So just walking on stage with them to get your award, it's like it's freaky.
Yeah.
It's like stargazing. I mean, that's what it's like. And then the panel that chose it are the 5 of the most important composers in the world today. And they're people who have been my heroes for a long time. So that's crazy. I mean, that's amazing. And I love them all for this. I mean, I think it's just like shocking that I got it. And then, of course, it brings you to the attention of, opera companies everywhere. We hope that's where it's going because we're in the planning for our 3rd opera. And then finally, it's a big chunk of change. It's the biggest award. It's $50,000. So it's the biggest award that's given to a creator of vocal music, I think, in the world.
Wow.
That is so cool.
And it's so funny because did you come across this just as an announcement through the University of Wisconsin-Madison?
I might have seen it in the Cap Times.
Okay. And because then the other job you have is that you're a professor of music at Madison, right?
Yeah.
When you're not composing award-winning operas, you're teaching the young people on how to do this.
Too bad you have no ambition,
and
Laura.
They're so gifted, man. I mean, I have like the most talented young student composers, but it is a full-time job, and so doing both is hard.
I would imagine. And so, what would you tell someone who claim they don't like opera, but if they've never been to one? What would you tell them to try to turn them on to the art form?
Well, if they like soap opera,
okay,
if they like musical theater, if they like big budget films, they're isn't anything like going to an opera, because an opera is so engrossing in terms of, it's not just the music and the singing, but it's also the stage and the actresses and the actors and the production, which, you know, depending on what house you're at, can be like overwhelming. Just seeing a set change is a moment that sometimes can make your heart just stop, you know? So it is an engrossing thing, and I think at first it's a little daunting because it's not like, hip hop. People don't listen to opera every single day, right? But if you're able to get tickets to an opera, I really suggest that it's the kind of thing that when you go, you never forget, and a lot of people just get, addicted.
Absolutely. All right, Laura Schwenninger, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Congratulations on the award. We will link everything if you want to learn more about it to our show notes today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, we have one more segment left. Stay tuned. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Goes Wisconsin with Kristen Bry and Jane Madnair. So have you seen much opera?
I have never seen an opera.
Just no interest?
And now I feel ashamed.
Well, don't feel as ashamed that I went to the Vienna Opera House and I can't remember which opera I saw.
Well, how old were you?
I was 33.
Oh, okay. So that was 3 years ago.
It was 3 years ago. And I'm sitting here because I know that we went and I know that it was beautiful. The opera house itself was beautiful. I remember enjoying the opera, and now I can't remember which one it actually was. I don't know which one's more embarrassing, having never gone or having gone into one of the most famous opera houses in the world and not remembering which show you saw 3 years ago.
That is hilarious. I think Laura pointed out something though that I'm gonna watch for. I'm gonna look for the Magic Flute or some of the funnier, lighthearted, less tragic operas, because I honestly didn't think they existed. I thought it was all angst and war and death and love and heartbreak, and sure, a fair amount of that is. And I thought her equation of opera to soap operas was really good.
Yeah. Well, it also, I mean, because it makes sense to me as far as it having both in the same way that Shakespeare was. There was the dramas and there was the comedies. And because there is the classic masks of the drama
Right.
and comedy mask, right?
Exactly.
And so, are you? I mean, I feel like I need to go with you so I can see you have your
My
pretty
first
woman moment
experience.
of when she cries at the opera. Remember?
And I'm thinking of Moonstruck, actually.
I've never seen Moonstruck.
Oh, it's a wonderful movie.
But
One,
John Patrick Shanley wrote that, right?
sure. I don't know. But Cher is in it.
I do know that Cher is in it.
And Vincent Gardenia.
Isn't Nicolas Cage
Nicolas
in it?
Cage is
Is
in
like
it.
very young Nicolas Cage.
Yes. It's a great film. And there is also opera is integral to the plot of that show, that movie as well.
Okay. Snap out of it.
Yeah.
That's it,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
I know what it is. I just have never seen the whole thing.
I think you would like it.
I probably would. Cher.
Cher,
National
Vincent
treasure.
Gardenia. Woman I'm forgetting now. I could see her. Oh, good heavens. She was in Steel Magnolias.
Sally Fields?
No. She
Dolly
was-
Parton?
No. She was the rich mayor's wife. Oh, it's going to drive me crazy.
You look it up. But yeah, I'm trying to think. She was lovely too. I feel like the story that she said that it was based off of was incredible as well.
Isn't
As
it?
far as just it's what was I just watching? I was watching something where people's like oh, you know what we watched last night? We watched Molly's Game. Have you ever seen Molly's Game?
I have not.
Do you know what it's about?
No.
So it's a true story. Jessica Chastain is the main character, but it's a true story about this woman named Molly Bloom who was like almost qualified for the Olympics, except she fell in her qualifying time and like blew up her back. And so she ended up basically growing. This is a very truncated version. She basically started the highest stakes poker game in the country. First, she was involved in it in LA, and then she recreated it in New York. And then she like inadvertently got involved with the mob.
Uh-oh.
And so she stopped. 2 years later, she got arrested. And so she wrote a book. Like, it's a fascinating story. And like her actual, even in her book, she doesn't name all the names. And that's like a centerpiece of the movie, is why she will not name names. And so like, it's like she had celebrities, athletes, people like very high power people coming and playing
Her games.
And we were watching that movie last night, and shoot, now I forgot what we were just talking about as far as.
Well, I was looking up the actress who starred in Moonstruck along with Cher and Nicolas Cage, and it was Olympia Dukakis.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. But now why was I going to say Molly's Game? Because I was going to say something else. Now I'm going to have to listen back to the show to have to remember. Since we're almost done in 4 minutes, I'll have to go.
What was I talking
What was I
about
talking
2
about?
minutes
Why was
ago?
I going to talk about Molly's Game, and how did that have to do anything with Moonstruck
And opera.
Opera.
Only you can know for
Only
sure, my
I
friend.
can know. Maybe someone will text in and be like, "You were going to talk about this," but we did watch that last night, and it was very good. And I know what I was going to say. Found it. Granted, Aaron Sorkin wrote and I think even directed Molly's Game.
Okay.
And Aaron Sorkin is arguably one of the best living screenwriters alive. And so the whip smart references that the characters have
The dialogue.
to art and culture and the Crucible and different poems and stuff and just things like that, where it's like I aspire so much to have that kind of referential banter and like the knowledge of arts and history and even pop culture to drop casually in conversation, but I can't even remember why I started a sentence sometimes. So I think my likelihood of accomplishing that maybe pretty low.
See, but now I think all we really need to do if we really want to impress people is drop the name Artemisia.
Oh, have you seen it? It was a Wisconsin.
Are you familiar with Artemisia?
Wisconsin professor won the Charles Ives Opera Award for
Let me
it.
tell you the story of 15th century painter Artemisia. Ew.
It's a pretty name.
It is a beautiful name.
Artemisia.
And again, just knowing, now we're going backwards, but Laura Schwendinger, who was just our guest, teaches at UW-Madison, just won this very prestigious opera prize or arts prize. How cool is it that that's in our own backyard?
I know. I think about that with all the different, we obviously had two different UW professors today with John Sheldon at UW Green Bay and Laura Schwenninger from UW Madison. But just thinking about the talent pool of people who are teaching at our universities, who are experts at what they do, who win prizes that in their field is a really big effing deal.
Yes.
But I would have never known this. I had to like research because, as we said, she's also the Berlin Prize winner. When I had to look that up, but I still don't fully understand what it is. But it sounds like it's literally the first thing on her Wikipedia page, and so now I have to go find what that is. But it's like the amount of people you encounter who are a big deal in their field and live in Wisconsin and work in Wisconsin, but without knowing more about that field, you just don't think twice about it.
We have a lot to be proud of.
We do. We absolutely do. And so, but yeah, that was really fun to have her on that. So now we have to we'll add it to their bucket list. Now we have to go see an opera together.
Absolutely.
Between Milwaukee or Madison, there's probably an opera coming up soon.
This is only like item number 67 on our bucket list. So
the big one is our traveling across the state in a camper.
Oh,
Maybe that's what we'll do.
Oh.
We'll get a camper and we'll retrofit the camper so we can do the show from the camper, and we'll put a big Civic Media banner on the side, and then we'll just go across the state and do the show from that and stuff like that. I think I'm onto something.
Hey, Brian Kelly, surprise.
Fancy Brian, this is your next project. Make it happen this summer. All right, we'll stick around for the Luke and Brian Dueling Tangents with Luke and